Hello, my name is Reed McWilliams. I'm here today to conduct an interview for the National Railroad Memorial and the City of Durand. The date is August 19th, 2014, and with me today is Tom Siminski. First, I want to thank you for agreeing to this interview. The information you provide will help us preserve the history of the railroad industry in Michigan, specifically in Durand. The content of this interview will focus on your past experiences working with the railroad industry. The final products of the interview conducted will be used by the National Railroad Memorial to tell the stories of those who have worked in the railroad industry. To begin, please give your full name, your age, and date of birth.
Thomas Siminski, March 13th, 1936, 78 years old.
Can you tell me where you were born?
Flint, Michigan.
What neighborhood or community did you live in at first?
Well, I lived on the west side of Flint till I was 4 years old, and then we moved to Grand Blanc, and I went to Grand Blanc school through the 4th grade, and we moved to Gaines, and I went to Gaines High School till graduation, and I hired out on the railroad.
How many people lived in your home with you?
There were 6 of us. I had 1 brother and 2 sisters.
Did anyone beside you, beside your immediate family, live with you?
Pardon me?
Did anyone beside your immediate family live with you?
No.
What did your community look like when you first lived here?
A lot different than it is now. It was just a normal farm community, then railroad. Railroad was a prevailing business and employer.
How has it changed?
Well, the railroad's no longer the big employer here in this town because we don't have the Grand Trunk in here. CN's now running it, and we don't have very many trains on our subdivisions, our minor subdivisions. They sold off the Muskegon division, and they sold off the Saginaw division, Greenville subdivision. So those trains are run by these smaller private railroads.
What was your first job when you got into the railroad industry?
I was a fireman.
What were your wages back then?
Well, my first job I was assigned to Grand Rapids, train 5051, went from Grand Rapids to Grand Haven and back. And I was making about $12 a day. 20.
How long did you stay at this work as a fireman?
As a fireman, I stayed till I was promoted, and I was set up in 1970.
What were you promoted to?
Engineer. I was promoted back in probably 64, but you had to wait for your seniority to get up to where they needed you as an engineer.
You mentioned that you had brothers.
I had 1 brother.
What jobs did he have?
He worked he was a pipe fitter. He worked for General Motors. He died when he was 35 years old.
Other than being a fireman and an engineer, did you find yourself working any other jobs?
Not on the railroad.
How long did you work as an engineer?
Well, my seniority, I have had, I was 41 years total seniority as firing and engineer until I retired in 1995.
What were your duties as an engineer and a fireman?
Well, the fireman, you just have to clean the engine out, and then you check see that you had coal, and see that you had all your mechanical parts were operating, stokers and air pumps and water pumps, so forth. And then you had to just follow the signals.
So what year did you, starting from fireman, what year did you start as a fireman and end as an engineer?
I started March the 18th, 1955, and I ended up in December 1995.
What job did you like better, being an engineer or a fireman?
Well, we didn't have any choice. Firemen went out, and when the arbitration award 282 went into effect, they discontinued firemen. And then, so consequently, you engineered, period.
What did you like least about these jobs?
What did I like
Least?
least?
Yes.
Shoveling coal.
That must have been pretty hard.
Well, when I hired out here, we had a lot of steam engines. Our locals were all hand-fired steam engines. And you might be on the road 16 hours shoveling coal.
Now we have computers that do
Yeah,
that.
now you don't, now you just go.
Working these jobs, where did you travel to? What was the usual travel distance?
Well, I worked the extra board out of Durand, and we protected Flint and Durand, Saginaw, and we had Muskegon and Grand Rapids yards, and then we had trains running from Durand to Grand Rapids to Muskegon to Bay City to Detroit, and all those different subdivisions.
So you went everywhere.
Well, I fired and ran on every division there is on the Grand Trunk at one time or another.
Could you share some stories about the people that you worked with while on the railroads?
Most of the stories I know, I don't think they want to print them.
Try not.
I don't know. Different, like we had an engineer. We had an engineer here that was a kind of rough guy to work with. He was not a bad guy, but he was a poor engineer, and he used to, on a steam engine, he used to beat the heck out of the engine, and that made my job about 100% more or worse than what it should have been. Yeah, we went to Muskegon one night on that 423, or 423, I think it was. Yeah, and when we got to Muskegon, and we laid over and coming back, we got a 3700 steam engine out of Muskegon. And everything was fine. We took off, and we got about 6 miles out of Muskegon, and the water pump quit. And I told the engineer, I said, you better put your injector on. I said, the water pump just quit. So he went to put on what we call a mud sucker injector. And we had a fireman on that job coming up from Durand that was studying for promotion. And he took the injector apart on that engine. And he put it back together, but he didn't get the joints all snugged up, and water was spraying every place but going in the boiler. So I had to knock the fire out of the engine, and we had to stop there and got the fire down, and pretty soon the water pump started. And when we got water back into the boiler, brought the fire back up and we took off, we got near to Grand Rapids and they quit again. And anyway, we got down into Grand Rapids and we changed engines with the local. Swapped off the 3700s. And anyway, when we left there, we had an engine, the regular engineer on that local was not really a good engineer either. One thing you used to have to do was blow the boilers out, keep the scum out of them, get them so they didn't pick up their water and so forth. And this guy, he wasn't good at doing that, which was a simple thing to do, but he just didn't do it. Anyway, we started uphill out of Grand Rapids and the engine picked up its water. And then you lose power. And we had to stop, get everything set up again. We pulled up clear to Grand Rapids or Ada. Went back down to Grand Rapids and went around our train, went down back to Grand Rapids and had the foreman check it out. We got back on from home. We were 16 hours going from Muskegon to Durand, which is not. Usually used to make that in 6-7 hours. But it was just due to those factors that prevented us from getting in there. And most of it was because actually the guy, he wasn't up on his job, really.
Yeah. So a lot of complications.
Well, yeah.
Was that one instance where you never had that many complications in?
Normally you wouldn't have anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have a little something. The oil pump or the water pump might have quit. But if you adjusted the lubricator properly, it may have started right back. But he didn't. I was a fireman, and I wasn't, at that particular time, I wasn't up on that stuff, because I was studying for my promotion. And so there was things that I didn't know about him that could have been done and made it a lot easier.
You mentioned you were also an engineer. What were your you mentioned your typical duties as a fireman. What were your duties as an engineer?
Just go by the rules and do your job. And all you had to do was switching or watch, or if you're out on the road, you had to know where you were going, how the lay of the land was, what switching there was to be done. Most of the time, if you got a new brakeman, a conductor, to just tell him, go do what the engineer tells you. And you wouldn't even see the conductor or the flagman. You'd have to do everything with a skid.
So it was a commanding position of sorts.
Well, the conductor was supposedly in charge of the train,
Yeah.
but he very seldom had.
Tell me of some of the most significant changes that you've seen on railroads.
Well, the diesel was a big change. When we used to have a roundhouse here in Durand and a machine shop, and those things, you had to have laborers to work on the cleaning the fires and getting coal and sand and so forth, and then you have hostlers that handled the units. They move them in and out of the roundhouse, and other than that, when the steam went, those jobs went. We lost a lot of employment at that time. And then after that, it was just diesels, and you had the mechanics in the roundhouse and electricians, and so they maintained everything.
What part of life working on the railroad do you miss the most?
The camaraderie of the guys.
Could you mention any moments of camaraderie? Like, Any brotherly moments?
Well, not specifically, no. We had a couple hundred engineers at that time on there, and we in Durand probably had, maybe 40 engineers. Battle Creek had probably the most, and they probably had 70, and Port Huron had 30, and Pontiac had 30, and Detroit had 40, and Chicago had about 24. But it was all, you never saw many of the guys from Battle Creek or Chicago.
Because you were all...
Because we were running from Durand to Detroit on the Detroit division, and Pontiac guys, you'd see Pontiac, Detroit guys, and once in a while from Port Huron, the guys from Battle Creek, men, you only seen them going through town. They stop and pick up or set off. And but if you got cut off at Durand, and you couldn't, your seniority, you had to go wherever your seniority was. Well, I'd always go to Pontiac if I could, Milwaukee Junction, and if I couldn't hold either of those, I'd go to Battle Creek. But it got right down to a point where you couldn't hold anything, you'd end up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the yard job there, and if you couldn't hold that, you just couldn't hold anything.
Can you tell me what downtown Durand was like back then?
It was, I don't know, except for being modernized, it's about like it was.
Yeah.
They spruced it up quite a lot, but the city or the town in itself is pretty much as it always was. There's a lot of places that are not here anymore that used to be factories, but they've been gone for years. We used to have a hoop factory here, a broom factory, and a couple other factories. They were before my time even.
So, just as busy now as it was back then?
Well, the city in itself is probably is just as busy, but they know not the railroad people. The people here live here now. Most all of them are in General Motors or Simplicity or some smaller Owasso, different factories in Owasso. But the majority of railroad men this town used to be, the majority were railroad men. And now it's not, it's a minute part.
Is there anything that you would like to tell us that we haven't covered? Anything exciting?
No, it was a good job. I worked in the factory. When I first got out of high school, I worked in Fisher Body over Flint. And I was a farm kid, and I was used to working outside, and I was working afternoon shift in the shop, and I didn't like it. I finally told the foreman to stick his job, and I quit. Mm-hmm. Well, then I hired on the railroad, and it was quite a lot different, but it was a good job. I was working for less money, but I put in more hours, and I had a lot of experiences, that hang with you over the years. And the people, most of the people I worked with are all gone now. There's probably, maybe might be 20 guys left that were ahead of me on the seniority list that are even alive anymore. So it's just, but I enjoyed the railroad, really. You didn't have anybody breathing down your neck all the time telling you to do this and that. You had a certain amount of work to do, and you had to go out and did it. The faster you did it, the faster you got done. When you got done, you went home. That was the way it worked then. And now they're right on you all the time. The guys that work there now, they're not happy.
Yeah.
They get a lot of money, they make a lot of money, but they're not happy.
That's usually the case, isn't it? You mentioned that you had a lot of experiences, other than that one with that angry railroader that was bashing equipment. Could you mention any other experiences that you had?
Well, there were jobs, like one time they called me off the spare board fire and wanted to know if I'd go on the snowplow from Pontiac to Caseville. Well, snowplow was not a good job. And I told them no, I didn't want it. So went along 10 minutes or so and the phone rang again and the train master from Durand called me up and he said, Tom, he said, we got to run that snowplow today. He said, we got a job up there. We got to go get it out. And he said, there's nobody around. And he said, available. And would you go on it? And I said, no, I've been on them snowplows before. I know how that is. Oh, you know, he's trying to talk to me. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to go. So about 15 minutes later, the phone rings again. And it was the chief dispatcher, Fred Summerhays. And Fred and I were pretty good friends. We played a lot of cards together and different things. And Fred says, Tom, he said, John, he said, we got to get this job up there. And he said, you're the only man available. We just got to get it up there. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll turn you. I said, Fred, who are you trying to shit? You ain't going to turn me. I'd be lucky to get up there in 16 hours, let alone turn me. Oh, no, he said, we do it all the time. I said, Fred, you're a lying son of a bitch. I said, I'll tell you that right to your face. I said, I'm going to go on a goddamn job just to prove you wrong. So we went, and sure as hell, we got to Oxford, and the air froze up. The road foreman of the engines was riding with us, and he says to me, what do you think's the matter with this thing, Tom? And I had been studying for promotion, and I said, well, the way by the gauge, I said, I would say that it's froze between the reservoir and the pipe, and the pipe. Well, there was a check valve. There were two reservoirs. And there was a check valve between them. And so I said, probably that check valve may have got condensation and it froze. So I said, well, go see if you can thaw it out. So here I am in snow, asshole deep to a tall Indian, and I'm down under there with a fuse heat trying to thaw out this damn check valve. And it's what it was. We got air and took off. And we hit some bad spots. But anyway, we get up to Caseville. And the crew had gotten out, left, but when they left, we had in our roundhouse, there was an upstairs and it was made into a bunk room. And the crew used to pull the switches on the different thing. Well, you pulled a lot of switches, but you didn't pull the furnace in the winter. But he did, and the dang thing, we get up there and there's no heat. Water froze up, everything. And after working all that time, I had took water, snow, and I got the fire going. I got snow and melted it down so we could wash up and stuff. And the engineer's going to bed. He said, I'm going to bed. And Leo Martell out of Pontiac. Anyway, I get into bed, and about the time I get to bed, the pipes start breaking loose. And there's water running all over the place. So I get up and I'm shutting off water there and do this and that. I got about 2 hours sleep for the whole night. And then coming back out of there. And the road foreman engines, of course, he'd gotten off at Pigeon. There was a hotel in Pigeon. He got off there and stayed the night. But when we got back to Pigeon, he got on, how's your job? Nice. Yeah, I told him how nice everything was. His name was Ivan Mead. And I used to talk pretty rough to him, and I was probably one of the few people on the railroad that ever talked rough to him. Everybody was afraid of Ivan, for some reason or other. He was stricter than heck, but if you stood up to him, you were all right. But if he thought you were going to back down, he'd right on you. And anyway, we were late coming in. We got into Pontiac and snow was piled up over the engine and over the snowplow and, you know, everything. They took pictures of it and they used to put it in the old railroad paper every now and then it'd come up. Another one about Ivan, it's a little story about Ivan. I was firing out of Pontiac and they cut the commuter one morning and I had a student kid out there with me. They sent him with me to teach him how to run this steam injector for the car, steam heat for the cars. And we're going along through it. We get down to Printer, Detroit, and we get stopped by a red block, and we're sitting there, and this kid says to me, "Boy, that Mr. Meade really knows these engines, doesn't he?" And I said, "Oh, bullshit." I said, "He came all the way." I said, "I taught him everything he knows." I get signed to Detroit as an engineer a couple of weeks later. And I'm going in there, signing in, and I look up, and here comes Ivan. I said, "I want to talk to you." And boy, all the guys, they just kind of shudder and they move it out and get away from it. Anyway, he comes up to me and he said, "What's this kid?" He said, "You're telling," I can't remember the kid's name now. He said that you taught me everything I know about these engines. I said, "Ivan, that's not exactly the way I told him." Well, he said, "Well, how did you tell him?" I said, "I told him that you brought your private car all the way to Durand just to ask me questions about that." He looked at me and he said, "I knew you were going to have an answer." He said, "I didn't know what it was going to be, but he said, I knew you were going to have an answer for him." That was him. But anybody else, they'd shuddered, you know, kind of backed off on him, but not me.
He was a tough guy.
Well, I wasn't a tough guy, but I always stood up for what I thought, you know.
That's a nice story. I like that.
Yeah, them guys say, "How do you get away with talking to him like that?" I said, "Because I'm not afraid of him. I don't care. What you gonna do with me? You know? You're gonna do nothing." He said, "You do that." "Well, if I did that," I said, "Yeah, that's right, because you're afraid of him."
Well, thank you for taking the time to be a part of this project. The information that you have provided will be preserved so that others who come after us will be able to access this information and learn a little bit about life on the railroad.
Well, sorry, I couldn't give you more stories and stuff.
Oh, it's fine.
There are some stories up here on these tapes someplace that we had years ago.